A very warm welcome to our weekly news magazine program, Bhutan This Week. I'm Bimal Hadin. Our top stories this week: His Majesty the King and His Holiness the Jekempo unveils the plaque for the Wangdi Podrang Zong construction project, marking the commencement of the project. Late Lebe Kinle Gelson was cremated at the Lekshe Jugni Shedra in Punakha on 24th January, and the National Council decides that any member vying for the seat in the National Council must now have a minimum work experience of 10 years. His Majesty the King and His Holiness the Jekempo unveiled the plaque for the Wangdi Podrang Zong reconstruction project, marking the commencement of the project on Tuesday. The Zong, which was built over 300 years ago by Shabdrung Ngaung Namgyal, was devastated by a fire in June 2012.
His Majesty the King and His Holiness the Jekempo formally marked the beginning of the Wangdi Podrang Zong reconstruction project. It was also attended by Her Majesty the Gyaltsen, Prime Minister, the Indian Ambassador to Bhutan V.P. Haran, and Cabinet Ministers. Upon the command of His Majesty the King, a prayer ceremony was held for the successful reconstruction works. His Holiness the Jekempo presided over the Chenrezi Shue Jingse to mark the much-awaited commencement of the reconstruction works of the Zong. Her Majesty the Gyaltsen also handed over a royal edict commanding the immediate release of money to the Zong Reconstruction Committee. His Majesty also granted 30 million nultrum, which was offered by the people in the country and from overseas to the office of the Gyobe Zimbe. Following a 200 million grant from His Majesty in 2012, the Bhutan Broadcasting Service mobilized 65.5 million, the Minister of Finance received over 28 million, and the Wangdi Rabde received 40 million nultrum for the reconstruction of the Zong. The Government of India added a 1 billion grant, bringing the total amount to over 1.3 billion nultrum. The reconstruction of the Zong is expected to be complete by December 2018. The total project cost is 1 billion nultrum, which is funded by the Government of India. The Zong will have modern amenities with adequate safety measures to prevent another disaster, but will preserve the age-old architectural designs. Compiled for Karma Sering, Tanden Finso, BBS News.
Late Levikinle Gelson was cremated on 24th January at the Lekshe Jugni Shedra in Punakha. The Health Minister, Foreign Minister, Major General Batusring and other senior government officials attended the funeral. Disciples of late Lebe from Vietnam were also in attendance.
The funeral was presided over by His Holiness the Jekempo and the 5 venerable Lebes of the Shung Tatsa. His Holiness and 2 Lebes presided over the Cherezi Sungcho and the Doji Lebe, along with the other 2 Lebes, Lamnetans, Kembos and hundreds of monks performed the mitup. Thousands of devotees also attended Lebekile Getse's funeral and offered prayers and yenda. There were also some devotees who had come from Laya.
Tangkasum barala de bekin lege se kudung jawani la ta shima jechu se melam tabani la
karna name kupum jawi la enda chipi wanga cha se be cha station ba jemen la yechu se te nyemale she je maso ngaje mashabi tiselo te ta thare na daru mi chi phini me se ngaje ta je maso se no di thare jawani la melam chi tap
melam sala ru te ta rangi sengwa no me de te rangi te ta 추수다 로지 좀베 소마발라 가지 아니디 가지 민나위
Lebekile Getse received the Druk Medal from His Majesty on 17th December last year for his contributions towards religious education. He had also served as the Drabi Lebe from 1999 to 2002. Late Lebekile Getse, who passed away at 67 years, was from Turkmenchina. He laid in repose for 21 days at the Lekshe Jugni Shedra. For Trinidema in Punakha, Namgizam for BBS News.
The Mipham Kabum Wanglung in Phinseling ended on Sunday. The ceremony, which began on 5th December, was presided over by His Eminence Namkhai Ningpo Rinpoche.
About 80,000 devotees had gathered for the Mipham Kabum Wanglung yesterday. There were even devotees standing in queue outside the War Hall due to lack of space. This is the first time that such an empowerment has been administered in the country.
It is said that simply by hearing the name Mipham, one will attain Buddhahood in a short period of time, whether one is a monk or a layman disciple. Therefore, it is important to follow a Mipham Rinpoche's teachings or receive such initiation. Mipham Kabum.
Over a period of almost 2 months, Rinpoche orally transmitted all 27 volumes of the Mipham Kabum. He also presided over the Yesul Nyingthik War from the Jamyang Khense Wangpo Kabum. Besides devotees from different dzongkhags in the country, there were also quite a few from outside Bhutan who attended the Wanglung.
My teacher, who is having a Dharma center in Belgium, Dzogchen Ranyak Patrul Rinpoche, he told me that Mipham Kabum is really something extremely important to receive for any practitioner who is following the Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism. And I also know that because in my Shadra we are studying a lot of texts and commentaries by Mipham Rinpoche. So of course I was extremely willing to receive that.
We learn how to be patient when sometimes pain and sometimes too hot and sometimes really cold, and so it's also like teaching itself we can get from this experience that we have here, and we are able also to apply all these teaching that we receive in our day-to-day life for these 2 months. So this is basically what I receive from this now. And
disciples will be reciting longevity prayers for Namkhai Ningpo Rinpoche tomorrow. For Sonam Wangdi in Phinseling, Namgizam for BBS News.
Anyone aspiring to contest in the next National Council elections must now have a minimum work experience of 10 years. This was decided by the National Council on Thursday while discussing the National Council Amendment Bill 2014. The member of the National Council's Legislative Committee, Dasho Karmayazar Reddy, proposed that anyone contesting for a seat in the National Council must have a work experience of at least 10 years. Dasho Karmayazar Reddy said the requirement was felt necessary for the National Council is an important institution with its foremost responsibility to review the government and issues of national interest. The proposal was welcomed by some. They said work experience does make huge difference in a person's ability to think and work wisely.
당가치라 롱아기 바나로 슝 잘해 소메라 슝 디디옹가 슝 가데병가 고디봉가 주라미실라 디카이라 로착 툴리 주도 옴비간레 디카라 디미스르기 차르임베 다네 베오들루 슝디 가데병으로다 고디병으로다 속디디 딩딩옹곱디 기합가테 수이두 수준이라 조라 가레기 투시나치나 냠용디 카초베라 가레기 슈데 랑기 카툴레베로 냠용디 카초베라 디노스타메스 주닐 다네 베오들루 로시디 가데비손나 디카레기 투시나 그렇잖아 수준이
냠용디 곱도라두 수준이라 다 cher galura jama gobela ta cher ngaralu shadiki ngagi sunila ta namlo nitong gelu terangi ta chisulu chama to gibe te dinalu zatuna chama to te zato to gibe dinalu na ta chisuki timibe gelong chogdegi timibe sam jongwar songkhakle rangina hechi sunila dinalu hebdalu tenda ngachamcheme ngacha songkha khechigi timida shen ngachigi na ngachigi kenengi timisuna ji anebedalu terangi tandapera chamatonegi tisapchi sunila anebedalu te karagi khenla na yomogi na shumesu khenla terok nyamyo yumi chanya chikalu rangi tandabe that sundina bedere beru ngachigi henjuna da ngachigi chochungilana bedere beru atsichi tandabe rangi ti atsichi de cham atomaso atsichi tishoda kenshe juni sunila.
But some were not in the favor of it. They think minimum of 10 years work experience is too hefty a requirement.
Ngaragi semkale bedeberuya te nyamyongchen ki temoda mingomdiso gobes junila te chala kachira jedeberu te nyamyong map doji bewajin geong chogdedi charjib ki chogajime 개갑기 따똑바 좀 지라 ngachira jungi dena 따똑바 좀 지메 데 냠용디 딩딩 맵도 집에 와진 데 개갑 jungi 티쇼스 드라우 집에 와진 개용 초대기 데줄루 잡조다 따똑 레션 맞어도 집에 와진 개갑루 녀가 범체님에서니라 대배우달루 냠용디 델로 주탐디 다라 다수스 주니라 말에
롱아이기 냠용 보비기 다리 차수이기 팀이데 주먹어 봐라 다 롱아 ngacha 나라 롱아 차니메 와라 데 디나티니레 다리 나와 토름시스 다 케미 마슈치 로추규다 캐치 되지 엄말라 뒤쪽에 데 롱아 되지 라베다와진 데 자치치베 고 로케징아 주니기냐 가도 발 아니베오다 가라 자치치베 조투면 우디 탑데 토토베 조투베 노디라
Few other members said work experience is not necessary.
단 냠용도 게 되다와진인 미기 잘레라 속에 나면 둘라 당가라 냠용유 캐쇼유 시세유세 미기 동가 사치 때랑하라 인스노 사치 된다와진 때로 미기 시라 냠용유 미디 가이나 주루비 미디 가이나 다 빼나 배워진 때다 지슈도 좀 메라 다레 지손을 마셔라 토름 시세 다큐 예루 라긴 냠용 미미 때 마셔라 자투 줍질라 디자투 주미디 속에 나면 뒤로 콩커레 종카 소소기 미세수 배월레tin 코라 미세기 셈칼레 가이기 중다 미셀로 차슈스는 메가 가이기 가저기 이거다 때 종카디나 펜 토니 메가스노 이때 투제디 레준베 땅같이 유카기 미세수 이때 레준베라 딱제베 숲세슈는 베라 다 아니 보다로 다 로추삼 메마 때 롱가디 조다 바진 때 아닐리 잡조로 유세슈는 베라
때 가dim치베 때 로추탐기 때 냠냠디 고베라 때가 제기다 다 짜팀디 티는 제 도주보 신라 디나루데 자모토미 아치 누수 명가 세비기 독발라 때 자모토미 때 도덴 파디스 때 누수 지여바진 때 미셀루 때 당파점니기 고가베 누수베 주니 메사 슈닐라 때 니포소돌루 때 가딤치베 때 당아지기다 나 짜팀디 티는 제심날레 때 가딤치베 록슈말루 때 자모토미 때 도덴 베비 마파르 맵도치바 진라 되게 택합도디 땡아치레기 가데베 베니 되게다 투셰지 농고 봉세 데 주아피니 있으슈닐라
After a lengthy discussion, the chairperson settled on deciding the matter through a show of hands. Of the 24 members present in the House, 16 supported. This led to the House to decide to set minimum of 10 years work experience as a requirement for anyone contesting for a seat in the National Council. Pemal Harden, BBS News. The Ilhenge Jungso lifted the ban on import of furniture and alcohol since Monday. It was agreed after the recommendations from the multi-sectoral task force in the spirit of renewing the bilateral trade agreement with India. It was found that restrictions did not serve the intended purpose in the economy and were not in line with the bilateral and regional trading agreements. The task force recommended the government to come up with fiscal measures to supplement monetary measures in order to ensure smooth functioning of the economy. Import of alcohol beverages and furniture was banned since 2012. Meanwhile, the ban on import of vehicles will be deliberated later upon consideration of the Pay Commission's report. The Prime Minister Sri Topke said total budget outlay for the 11th five-year plan, which is 213 billion niltrum, is as approved by the Parliament. He also informed the House on budget assured by the donor agencies, adding that the international financial institutions have committed 71 billion niltrum as a grant. This was in response to the question from the opposition leader during the question hour session.
The opposition leader asked about the current status of the 11th five-year plan. He questioned the Prime Minister on the 11th five-year plan and asked if there had been revision of the content and reduction of the budget. The Prime Minister said the plan has not been altered in any form. Prime Minister Sri Topke also informed members about the budget of the 11th five-year plan and shared details of grants that the government will be receiving from development partners.
Sane jungda shiobgi be loda chebe te chala zemidi ngachigi matos. Togomidi ngacharegi kelang bemisu. Disu kara chaji chupnalu tudi yu se shuni. Chaji chuchipnalu. Dache chaji chuchipdi digi sedi 마 밥지가 왔어요. 이 밥라 마파 세슈니 ngache nahi in the gubinalu chajo zenamdalu the chaji chuchip di terbum nija chusube the chajo zenami di nija chusubera yu se shuni dimase ngache regi migul suya the tora mato se shuni chaji chuchip gi migul di te ngache gekap di rango rando gi gekap zoni di dilumik pake di labedo.
The Panmang MP Doji Wangdi said the government claims to have achieved 74% of the first 100 days pledges and asked the Prime Minister to highlight the achievements.
다 제가 슝기 카톨레 배워진 샤당 직적이 캘랑기 톨레 개합다 미슬루 케펜 봄쇼다 펜납 치셔라 딱받지 세딜라 가지러 중인가.
Responding to MP Doji Wangdi, the Prime Minister shared the status of the 100 days pledges. He said many have been fulfilled and that the government is working on fulfilling the remaining pledges, which includes restarting the Bhutan lottery business.
Samfele bewajin tenga jingen goki chonjudi de jamongo bera de chashuni de dianga je shio lensolu yugo taing se shuni. Sumba sodalu shokzini la lottery. The lottery dianga je ngade the chika jagagi ngade the chika sunde gutsuni be the kalabdi yu kelang bebo yu da ngache nyusul henkanalu lottery gi desenra sosobe sudi yu se shunila lokjira gutsudola.
For Sonam Hamo, Namgizam for BBS News.
Meanwhile, the National Council questioned the Finance Minister on the government's plans and strategies to better manage a severe debt situation. According to the report by the Royal Monetary Authority 2013, the country's total debt stands at 105 billion niltrim, of which the convertible currency debt stands at 37 billion niltrim.
All this while, the pre- and post-election concern has been on the national debt. On the same note, the National Council raised their concerns on the management of the national debt to the Finance Minister.
당바 토바진 ngachi 도람대로 준식견이 니바디 톱모습 도치 배워진 땡아치라기 공표기 라두수 가라 두수고 두고베 디벨리 땡디기베 ngachi기 도람 톱모습 배워진 땡아치기 균디디 제시 때 마팝 기토레 땡아치 mikbadi digo kedo seshunila sumbatega hebdalu teda zoora ngachirgi logmi legil dusume dani bodalu ngachigi te nalepa donglende gade benimo sojin da logmi legil dusu bodalu te daresusu gara ngachirgi teda government gi tholebe intergovernmental se IG se digi ngachi lamluchi du seshunila da dari ngachi maungbanalu teda ngachirgi nyamdal gi tholebeshina the dinalu ngachigi joint venture se danal bewachin te ngachilu bilinam semichi mitineme bilitidi bidibero te khonagi ngachirage logmi legil digube tinime se shunila te shibatega hebdalu ta jide ngachiragi ta logmi legil chungudusu te ngachiragi share su te ngachiragi gerdeda te ngachiragi te misilu binshinabe di mangil duwachin the
National Council also raised their concerns on the repayment of the convertible currency debt, which stands at 37 billion niltrim.
ngachiragi lomi legulu memedi the biligi yongdom knowledge pabajin the jacha sumchu sochi da sashi me se shunila da ani nalegi the da dusu gadebe tainga dusu gadebe ani bedina dusu gara the shungi khatule the tapshi gara ranasagi sodigi be dusu the gara khonagi the legul telen the dinalogi the bebe watching the jingagi shudu sumbi da ngachiragi namdu nyodagi the tuke dusugi nyodagi gi beme tusu gara the disunagi ombagi be tabnigi the cheshida lamlu sodi se shunila.
The National Council also questioned on the significant difference between the approved budget and budget ceiling for the fiscal year 2013 and 2014. This has led to cancellation of many prioritized works, creating confusion between the villagers and the local leaders.
Chidi te gara sonam jingla beole tendigibe te sonam jingla di te ngachira sonam henkanale te lamlu chi sodi du se shunila. Te lamlu di 때 공기 로 당맘데 소남 진남기 찰라딘 남달로 로 당맘이 디날로 때 가라 코나기 때다 같이 배워진 더디기 된래 때 레콩 카소속이 날래 때 나와두수 랭업 다 배워진 라신네 땅기 델렌 디수기 가라기 때 더디기 된로 배워들로 로 당바디날로 디 뒤인데 아니 고메 세슈니라 디베올리 땡디기베 때 다랭아지 찰로 당바디날로 때 기억이 소남 진란디들로 때 찬울마 밥좀이디 때 로당마 별레텐디 세슈니라 다 로니번날로 때 nga지기 레와데 리시디 같이 모서진 다 코나기 소남 진랑기 라드수 가라 때다 디날로 다디기 라드수 가라 베수비기 레와인 세슈니라
Pematsuki for BBS News.
An elected member of the parliament will now have to reimburse the campaign fund for the general elections if they submit voluntary resignation before assuming office. This is in keeping with the new resignation clause of the National Assembly Amendment Bill 2014, which was endorsed on Thursday. The clause did see intensive deliberation with mixed reactions from the MPs. Some members pointed out that reimbursement of campaign fund is inadequate given millions of niltrams spent on conducting elections in just one constituency. Some members proposed a need for more stringent clause, such as not allowing the members who resigned to partake in future elections for a certain period. Some said equal, if not more, focus should also be given on serving MPs. They said it is important to see if the MPs are doing their job. Meanwhile, the National Council questioned the Education Minister on increasing number of teachers leaving the education system every year.
Trongsa's National Council member Thachin said the annual education statistics 2013 stated that a total of 1,334 school teachers have left the education system in the last 5 years. This comprises of 49 community-based teachers, 334 civil servant teachers, 446 expatriate contract teachers and 495 national contract teachers. The annual education statistics 2013 also revealed that around 750 teachers resigned on voluntary basis in the last 5 years. Of that, 621 teachers were those teaching in middle and higher secondary schools. MP Thachin said increasing number of teachers leaving every year is of great concern, especially given the country is faced with shortage of teachers. He said teachers quitting the job in such large numbers could be a reflection of their dissatisfaction with the job and the incentives and reward they get. This dissatisfaction, he said, might be driving them to explore better opportunities. MP Thachin asked the Education Minister if the Education Ministry has new plans and policies to retain qualified and experienced teachers. In response, Education Minister Mingmu Dukpa clarified that 1,334 teachers who left the job in the last 5 years include those that reached their retirement age and also those on study leave.
Living this ungachi sherik lenkak leten jomesi chidi mapale khoragi lodara chand gibe lalu nebe jono sishuni lalu khabak gi disejo digibe te nebe jono lalu jongdar dato ngachi jongdar na jongdar bedi gibe leben lasha chige gable phaye te du ngachi ge khabi nana ye sishuni te lalu di ro shen lekhung Kanale Paya you Podigibe, the Genus Shuni, the Jogomedia Laluro, Levengi Layole Hakti, Roshenka, Leshim Tobletendigibe, your Imbesishuni.
And this what the Education Minister had to say on the plans and policy to retain qualified and experienced teacher.
Sijuna Gachib Sochi Chidi Nachigi. Living is Satsuki Korle, the Chidi deployment, Yokelgi Korle, the Chidi career track la, Yogi Dunam Disu, the Lagi professional development la, the Chidi Taruani Shipselgi performance management gi MGS Shuni.
Karmatsring, BVS News.
That's all we have for you this week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pemal Hardin saying goodbye.